We thought we'd have a little look and a little delve into specific emotions in the next few weeks. And last week I was talking about a podcast that was talking about anger, and so we thought we would start there. Would you say you are someone who would get angry easily, or do you think you're like quite a chill? I see you as quite a chill person, but you know, maybe there's the hidden dragon within Amy.
I am definitely a chill person, but I think if you press the wrong button on there, so anything to do with my kids, for example, you know, don't mess with my kids and you'll just see a completely different person. So maybe I'm angry in the right context. I can't imagine you ever being an angry person.
Yes, I actually was quite angry as a child. I struggled a little bit with it. And I think what I've learned is I think my anger is quite nuanced. When we teach on anger, we look at what we call a funnel of emotions. And we would say, like, there's different words that are around the word of anger, for example. But if I said to you, oh, someone broke into my house last night, I'm a little bit frustrated about that, that doesn't feel like the right word, does it? Even though it is related to the word anger. If I said someone's broken into my house and I'm so angry I could explode, that would be acceptable because you'd be like, well, yeah, I can understand why you're feeling like that at the moment. I would say I mostly get frustrated.
Yes.
So I get really frustrated at things. When we get frustrated, it's a bit like a bottle of Coke, and it's like it gets shaken every now and again. And the way to deal with a bottle of Coke that's being shaken is to really slowly undo the top so that you let out the pressure. And I think I've learned from sort of struggling a bit with frustration when I was younger and not knowing what to do with that and sort of exploding because of that, having that ability to work out the things that undo that pressure. The biggest question I ask myself when I feel angry is, does this actually matter? And I think sometimes it does. And when it does, it is usually around topics of injustice. Less to do with injustice towards me, although sometimes to do with injustice towards me. It's a massive part of anger that is linked to justice. Whether it is my sister's been in the bathroom for too long and now I can't get ready for school, and so that feels like an injustice to me because it was unfair, or whether it is I'm seeing pictures of children going into war zones, and that to me is also an injustice. Have I ever been so angry that I felt out of control? I can't think of a time where I have. It's like a match. I strike and I'm like, oh, actually no, it doesn't matter. It's not that important. This is something that we would do in school, and maybe if you're listening to the podcast, this is something that you could just take a moment to do. So what I want you to think about is your whole body, and I want you to place your hand, if appropriate, on the place where you first know you are feeling angry.
I'm going to go out there.
Yeah, so I would be the same. I'm a chest person. Some people might say head. Some people will say pit of stomach. And now what I want you to do is think about what part of the body does anger come out of for you. So where does it travel to? Your mouth. My anger comes to my hands. Anger needs to be released because it is an adrenaline-based emotion. So when I'm doing this in school, I would do it with a gingerbread man, and I would get a young person to just draw a map of where that anger is going in their body and at what point they can't stop it. I mean, if I told you to go and do some boxing when you feel angry, it might release tension, but it's not going to help you because your anger, you said, came out of your mouth.
Yeah.
And so for you, it would be much better for me to say, who's the person in your life who you can just go and rant to get it out of you. Yeah. I could just and it's all out then. For me, if I talk about my anger, I get more angry. Like it circulates it because I get more and more into my head and then it gets too much. So for me, actually, to do something physical when I feel angry, so even going for a walk, or if I'm in the gym using a medicine ball or a slam ball, something like that, always is the thing that will calm down my angry mind. I don't get angry loads, so no one's got to be worried about that. And I think most people would know when I'm angry. I also cry sometimes when I'm angry. So yeah.
Just to release that emotion is crying appropriate because you've just got all this emotion inside you.
Sometimes I'm angry because I'm disappointed. So going back to that thing about anger being a secondary emotion, when I can identify what the emotion actually is underneath that anger, I can then deal with that emotion. Dealing with the hurt or the disappointment or the shame, for me, would normally be crying, and allowing that to then happen allows the healing and the anger to disperse.
I hadn't really thought about anger being different for people. So I think, you've been really clear on how actually you can see it in different ways. And just because one way works for me doesn't mean that way is something that I could show my child who is more of a physical maybe person. So it's very individual, isn't it? How to manage your own anger and how to find ways that work for you.
Anger and passion are almost the same thing. I've already said what we get angry about is often to do with what we care about. One of the things that I find really interesting when I'm working with young people is talking about values. And we all grow up with a value system. And that will be through our parentage, might be through our schooling, through our culture, through our religion. All these different things will affect our value system. You said right at the beginning, when it involves my children, I will get angry.
Yeah.
That's because your children, and there's something to do with children that will be part of your value system. And when we feel like one of our values is threatened, we will go into that fight or flight response. And you might react in completely different ways because you might be wired differently, but you would react because it would be about survival.
And so I think we could be more susceptible to anger when our values are threatened and taken away from us, because they're things that we want and they're being taken away, and that would make us angry. And whatever value that is, whether it is a positive one or a negative one, the fact that it's being threatened hits those fear and threat responses.
So the way we move out of anger and injustice is taking our passions and our skills to create change.
Okay, it's quite interesting actually. Yeah, you can quite quickly kind of see. So I think again, like the things that I get angry about are all to do with kind of fairness. And then if I look at the things that are in my circle that I'm passionate about, all around people and having people having the best that they can have. I'm good at multitasking. I'm a good peacekeeper. I'm organised. I love learning. So again, they all fall into the same category actually. So that's actually really interesting.
You would take your skills and your passion to deal with the things that you're angry on and to make change in the things that you're angry about.
Yes, exactly. And then it's interesting also because then you can think about what other people would put in their boxes. Thank you. I like it that we're using your some of your skill sets here. That I know you go out and you kind of go out to schools and you do lots to do with mentoring as well. But actually, even as adults, there's things that we either didn't have as children, did we, in schools, and we weren't privileged enough, in our education to have somebody like you. But also with things that we've forgotten. We all, obviously, that are going to listen to the podcast are working with young people, but we also all have families. We're all human, and I think what you're teaching us and giving us a skill is actually really, really useful. So thank you, Lou.